The table for 8 sat empty except for me. The gold and silver, congratulations. Balloons bobbed against the ceiling fan, casting strange shadows over the white tablecloth. I checked my watch. 2 hours and 17 minutes since I'd arrived. My phone remained silent except for the occasional ping from the restaurant's Wi-Fi connecting and disconnecting. "Would you like to order now, or are you still waiting?" the server asked for the 4th time, sympathy edging into impatience. "Just 5 more minutes," I said, the words feeling hollow even to my own ears. The reservation had been made by Quinn, my boss, who had enthusiastically suggested this upscale restaurant to celebrate my promotion to senior research developer. "We'll get everyone there," he'd promised. "The whole team wants to celebrate you, Bryn." I sipped water that had long since lost its chill and pretended to study the menu I'd memorized an hour ago. My finger traced circles on the condensation from my glass, creating tiny pools on the tablecloth. The waitstaff now actively avoided eye contact, their pitying glances more painful than outright rudeness would have been. My phone vibrated against the table. Not a text from Quinn explaining the delay. Not an apology from Talia, who had been my work confidant for 5 years, who had helped me rehearse my acceptance speech for this very promotion. Instead, a notification from a social media app I rarely used. Something twisted inside me as my finger hovered over the screen. I shouldn't look. I knew I shouldn't. I tapped it anyway. The image loaded slowly, pixel by pixel, like the universe wanted to give me one last chance to turn away. There they were, my entire department crowded around a massive cake at the rooftop bar across town. The Skyline, where we sometimes went for after-work drinks. Where I'd once held Talia's hair back when she got sick after too many cocktails. Where Quinn had first mentioned I might be considered for promotion. "Happy retirement," read the icing on the cake. The caption tagged Camden, my rival who'd been with the company for just 7 years to my 5. Camden, who consistently took shortcuts while I worked weekends. Camden, who was apparently important enough for everyone to abandon my celebration. In the photo, Talia had her arm around Camden, her smile wider than any she'd ever given me. Quinn stood nearby, raising a toast. Nico, Faye, Wes, Jasper, all my colleagues, clustered around, glasses high, faces flushed with genuine joy. Not one of them had even bothered to text me. I zoomed in on the timestamp. The photo had been posted 40 minutes ago, when they were already over an hour late to my dinner. This wasn't a case of stopping by both events. They had chosen, collectively and deliberately, to skip mine entirely. The realization hit me with physical force. I wasn't just forgotten. I was excluded, intentionally left behind while they celebrated the person who had made my professional life a quiet nightmare for years. My finger hovered over the screen when another notification appeared. "HR department. We need to talk. Now." Before I could process this, another message flashed. 93 missed calls. My hands began to tremble. Was I being fired? On my promotion day? Had the announcement been a mistake? Had they gathered to celebrate Camden's retirement and my termination on the same night? I stood up so quickly, my chair scraped loudly against the floor. Throwing cash on the table to cover the drinks I'd nursed for hours, I rushed outside, ignoring the startled looks from the restaurant staff. Rain had started to fall, gentle but persistent. I stood under the restaurant's awning, staring at my phone in disbelief. 93 missed calls, all from the company's HR department. How had I not noticed them? Then I remembered turning off my ringer during a meeting that morning and never turning it back on. With shaking fingers, I called the number back. "Human Resources, this is Veda speaking." The voice on the other end sounded breathless, panicked. "This is Bryn Azarian. I have several missed calls from—" "Bryn, thank goodness. Where have you been? We've been trying to reach you for hours." "I was at my promotion dinner," I said, bitterness seeping into my voice. "Alone." There was a brief pause. "Listen, we have a situation. The materials for tomorrow's investor meeting. They're showing catastrophic failures in test buildings using the rapid development formula." My heart started pounding. The rapid development formula? That's not my work. That's Camden's approach. "Well, it's what's in all the presentation materials. The CEO is furious. The entire executive team is at headquarters now. The company will collapse if tomorrow's funding round fails. But my formula works. I have all the test results. Can you come in? Now? You're literally the only person who might save us. I glanced back through the restaurant window at my empty celebration table, the balloons now drooping pathetically in the corner. I'll be there in 20 minutes. If you're shocked at how Bryn's colleagues treated her, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more gripping stories of betrayal and sweet revenge. Comment below what you think Bryn should do next. Now, let's continue with her story. My name is Bryn Azarian, and until that night, I believed that hard work and integrity would eventually be recognized. I was 32 years old, with a double doctorate in chemistry and materials science that I'd earned while working part-time to support myself after my parents died in a car accident when I was 19. I had no siblings, few close friends outside of work, and had poured everything into my career. 5 years earlier, I'd joined the research team developing a revolutionary waste-to-building materials process. The concept was brilliant: transform plastic waste into construction materials stronger and more durable than concrete, at a fraction of the environmental cost. If successful, it could revolutionize both waste management and construction industries worldwide. I was quiet but thorough, spending long hours in the lab testing various molecular combinations. My colleagues respected my work ethic, if not my reserved personality. I didn't join happy hours often, preferring to stay late analyzing results, but I wasn't completely antisocial. I formed a close friendship with Talia, who joined the team a month after me. She was everything I wasn't: outgoing, quick-witted, socially adept. But she appreciated my dedication and often helped translate my technical findings into presentations that management could understand. Then Camden arrived. From day one, Camden commanded attention. Tall, with an easy smile and charismatic presence, Camden had a way of making everyone feel special with just a few words. Within weeks, Camden had charmed the entire management team with grandiose promises and flashy presentations. While I meticulously tested formulations in the lab, recording every failure and incrementally improving our process, Camden spent time cultivating relationships with upper management. When I raised concerns about Camden's rushed processes, skipping crucial testing phases, I was labeled overcautious and afraid of innovation. Science takes time, I argued in one heated meeting. So does bankruptcy, Camden replied, earning chuckles from around the table. We need to move faster or we'll miss our market window. Quinn, our department head, began excluding me from key discussions. I noticed meeting invites arriving after sessions had already begun. Reports I submitted would be misplaced. My budget requests were delayed or denied. My colleagues slowly drifted away too, gravitating toward Camden's orbit of optimism and promises. Only Talia remained loyal, or so I thought. They just don't understand how thoroughness protects the company, she would assure me over lunch. Keep doing what you're doing, Bryn. Someone will notice eventually. And someone did notice. 3 weeks ago, independent testing confirmed what I had known for months. My formula worked. It created materials that were stable, strong, and scalable. Camden's rapid development approach, which had been promoted as the company's primary direction for the past year, showed alarming instabilities in prolonged weather testing. The announcement of my promotion to senior research developer shocked everyone, especially me. The company needed someone to lead the commercialization phase, and somehow, despite years of being sidelined, I'd risen to the top. Camden announced retirement the very next day, scheduling a party for the same evening as my promotion dinner. I tried not to take it personally. Maybe after being the golden child for so long, the reality of being passed over was too much to bear. Talia had promised to be at my dinner early. "I'll help set everything up," she'd said. "This is your moment, Bryn." Now, as I drove through the rain toward the office, her betrayal stung more than all the others combined. The parking garage was unusually full for 8 o'clock at night. I recognized the CEO's luxury vehicle and several executive cars. This was serious. When I entered the conference room, the tension was palpable. Screens displayed images of crumbling test structures, the rapid development formula disintegrating under basic weather conditions. Quinn looked up, surprise flashing across his face. "Bryn, what are you doing here? Weren't you having some dinner? HR called me. 93 times, actually. I kept my voice neutral, though anger simmered beneath the surface. The CEO waved me over. Bryn, thank goodness. We've got a disaster on our hands. These are going to investors tomorrow? I asked, gesturing toward the screens. The conference room door opened, and Camden walked in, followed by Talia and several others, all still wearing party clothes. The scent of alcohol hung around them. My retirement party was interrupted for this? Camden asked, voice sharp with irritation. The formula just needs minor adjustments. I opened my laptop, avoiding looking at Talia. That formula will never work. The molecular bonding is fundamentally unstable under variable weather conditions. So, we're doomed, the CEO said, rubbing his temples. Not exactly. I pulled up my test results. My formula works. Has worked for months. I've been trying to tell everyone. The room fell silent as I explained the technical details. I noticed Talia shift uncomfortably when I mentioned the testing I'd completed 3 months ago. Testing she knew about but had apparently never mentioned to others. Where are these results in our presentation materials? The CEO demanded. Camden stepped forward. I've never seen these tests. She must have run them independently, outside protocol. That's not true, I said quietly. I submitted all findings through proper channels. Every test, every result. Quinn cleared his throat. I don't recall seeing these specific results. Something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. He wasn't meeting my eyes. Neither was Talia. Check the shared drive, I suggested. Project folder, subfolder, long-term stability testing, date range March through May. The CEO nodded to the IT director, who pulled up the drive on the main screen. The folder was empty. That's impossible, I whispered. I uploaded everything. Files get lost, Camden said with a shrug, especially when they're not properly communicated to the team. I felt a cold understanding sweep through me. This wasn't an accident. Someone had deliberately removed my findings, but I had prepared for this possibility. Years of being overlooked had taught me to keep backups. I have copies, I said, plugging my external drive into the computer. And I can prove these tests were completed under protocol. As the files loaded, I noticed Talia slip something into a desk drawer at the back of the room. Her movement was casual but purposeful. For the next 2 hours, I walked the executive team through my formula and testing protocol. By the end, there was consensus. We would revise tomorrow's presentation to feature my stable formula instead of Camden's failing one. You've saved us, Bryn, the CEO said, patting my shoulder as the meeting broke up. I don't understand how we almost missed this. I smiled tightly. Neither do I. As people filed out, I hung back, pretending to gather my materials. When the room emptied, I walked to the drawer I'd seen Talia access. Inside was a folder labeled Camden's Final Project, Investor Presentation. I opened it with trembling hands. There were my original reports, with my name removed and Camden's inserted instead. I stared at the altered documents, a strange calm settling over me. 5 years of dedication, of being overlooked and underestimated, crystallized into this moment of absolute clarity. It wasn't just Camden. It was Talia. It was Quinn. It was an entire system that rewarded those who took shortcuts over those who did the work. I made digital copies of the altered documents and carefully returned the originals exactly as I'd found them. Then I walked out of the building into the rain, which had intensified to match my mood. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I lay awake in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, formulating a plan that would change everything. The next morning, I arrived at work early, before most of the team. The investor meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m., and everyone would be scrambling to incorporate my formula into the presentation. I dressed meticulously, a sleek outfit I'd bought for my promotion dinner, tags still attached. Quinn spotted me in the hallway and approached with a nervous smile. Bryn, you're a lifesaver. The team worked all night revising the materials. Happy to help, I said, my voice pleasantly neutral. About last night, he began, then paused. Your dinner. We should have… It's fine, I interrupted. The company comes first, right? That's what you've always said. He looked relieved. Exactly. I'm glad you understand. I understand perfectly. I replied, maintaining eye contact until he looked away first. The investor meeting went flawlessly. My formula impressed the group of stern-faced venture capitalists who had flown in from across the country. The CEO beamed as they agreed to provide the full funding amount, $180 million, to scale production. Camden sat at the far end of the table, face carefully composed but fingers drumming restlessly against a leather portfolio. Talia kept shooting glances my way, but I focused on answering technical questions with precision and confidence. After the investors left, the CEO clapped his hands together. "Champagne for everyone! We did it!" Glasses were passed around, and Quinn raised his in a toast. To teamwork and innovation. Everyone drank except me. When Quinn noticed, he raised an eyebrow. "Not celebrating, Bryn? I'm just processing," I said quietly. "It's been an eventful 24 hours. Camden approached, champagne glass in hand. "Nice save with the formula. We should talk about how to integrate some of my rapid development techniques into your approach." "That would be difficult," I replied, "considering your approach fundamentally undermines the molecular stability that makes my formula work." Camden's smile tightened. "There's always room for collaboration." "Is there?" I asked. "Like how you collaborated with my research by removing my name and adding yours?" The color drained from Camden's face. Nearby, Talia suddenly became very interested in her champagne. "I don't know what you're talking about," Camden said, voice low. "I think you do. But we don't need to discuss it now. This is a celebration after all." I walked away, feeling Camden's eyes burning into my back. Over the next week, I appeared completely cooperative. I led technical briefings. I answered questions. I maintained a pleasant, professional demeanor that revealed nothing of my inner thoughts. Meanwhile, I was gathering information. Every email, every altered document, every meeting where decisions about my work had been made without me. The company atmosphere shifted subtly. My suddenly central role in the project created a power imbalance no one quite knew how to navigate. Camden postponed retirement, citing a desire to ensure smooth transition of knowledge. Quinn became overly solicitous, including me in every meeting, asking for my input on decisions that had nothing to do with my department. Talia tried repeatedly to speak with me privately. "Bryn, we need to talk," she said, cornering me in the lab one afternoon. "About what?" I asked, focusing on my computer screen. "About everything. The dinner, the documents. I want to explain." I finally looked at her. "What's there to explain? You made your choices." "It wasn't like that," she insisted. "Things got complicated. Camden had Quinn convinced that your approach was too cautious, that we'd lose our funding window. I tried to advocate for you, but what? You decided stealing my work was easier than standing up for what's right?" Her eyes filled with tears. I was scared. "Quinn made it clear that anyone siding with you would be sidelined. I have my mother's medical bills, Bryn. I couldn't risk my job." "And now?" I asked. "Now that it's clear my approach was right all along? What are you scared of now, Talia?" She didn't answer. "That's what I thought," I said, turning back to my computer. 3 weeks after the investor meeting, I requested a private session with the board of directors. Quinn tried to dissuade me. "The board is very busy," he said. "Anything you need to discuss can go through normal channels." "Not this," I replied. "This requires direct board attention." "Is this about Camden?" "Because we can address any concerns internally." "It's not just about Camden," I cut him off. "It's about systematic issues that nearly cost this company everything." He fell silent, a flicker of fear crossing his face. The board meeting was scheduled for the following Monday. For the weekend preceding it, I didn't answer calls or texts from anyone at work. Instead, I hiked alone in the mountains, watching hawks circle overhead, feeling the sun on my face. For the first time in years, I felt completely clear about my path forward. Monday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine after a week of rain. I dressed carefully in understated professional attire and arrived early, setting up my presentation materials before the board members filed in. The CEO looked nervous. I had declined to share the specific nature of my presentation in advance. "I hope this is important, Mrs. Arian," said the board chairwoman, an elegant woman in her 60s. "We've adjusted several schedules to accommodate this request." "I assure you it is," I replied, "and I appreciate your time." As I began speaking, the room grew increasingly tense. I wasn't there to name names or assign blame, not yet. Instead, I methodically outlined how our company's culture had evolved to prioritize appearances over substance, charisma over competence, promises over results. 3 weeks ago, I said, this company nearly lost $180 million in funding because fundamental scientific processes were circumvented in favor of speed. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. It was the inevitable outcome of a system that rewards the wrong things. I presented a reorganization plan that would transform how projects were evaluated, a system with built-in accountability, multiple levels of scientific review, and protection for those who raised concerns about cutting corners. I'm not here to complain about credit, I told them. I'm here because our current structure rewards politics over results, and that nearly cost us everything. If we don't change now, we'll face this exact scenario again, perhaps with more devastating consequences. The board members exchanged glances. The chairwoman leaned forward. What you're suggesting would require significant restructuring, she said, including changes to key leadership positions. Yes, I agreed. It would. And you have concrete recommendations for those changes? I slid a folder across the table. I do. The CEO reached for it, but the chairwoman got there first. She opened it and read silently, her expression unreadable. Then she passed it to the person beside her. One by one, the board members reviewed my proposal. When everyone had read it, the chairwoman spoke. We'll need to discuss this privately, Ms. Azarian. Please wait outside. I nodded and left the room, sitting on a bench in the hallway. Through the closed door, I could hear raised voices. 2 hours passed. My phone buzzed with texts from Quinn, from Talia, from others on the team, all asking what was happening in the board meeting. I ignored them all. Finally, the door opened. The chairwoman gestured for me to come back in. Ms. Azarian, she said once I was seated, the board has deliberated on your proposal. While we have some modifications to suggest, we are in agreement with the fundamental restructuring you've outlined. The CEO looked pale. Several board members wouldn't meet my eyes. Furthermore, she continued, we believe such a significant reorganization requires new leadership. The board has voted to create a new division, Innovation Verification, with direct oversight of all research protocols and testing procedures. We would like to offer you the position of Division Director, effective immediately. I kept my expression neutral, though my heart raced. And my reporting structure? You would report directly to the board, she replied, and current research leadership would report to you. Quinn would report to me. The realization must have hit him at the same moment, as he shifted uncomfortably in his seat. When would you like to announce these changes? I asked. A company-wide meeting has already been scheduled for tomorrow morning, the CEO said, his voice strained. We should present a united front. Of course, I agreed. A united front is important. That night, I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, the entire company gathered in the auditorium. Rumors had been circulating since my closed-door board meeting, and the atmosphere hummed with tension. Quinn fidgeted nervously in the front row. Camden, retirement once again postponed, looked confidently relaxed, clearly assuming whatever changes were coming wouldn't affect someone so essential to the company. Talia sat alone, chewing her lip anxiously. The CEO took the stage first, his smile not quite reaching his eyes as he announced the creation of the new Innovation Verification Division. When he introduced me as the division director, a murmur ran through the crowd. I stepped up to the microphone, surveying the faces before me, some confused, some worried, some calculating how this would affect their positions. Thank you all, I began. The changes we're implementing today aren't just about organizational structure. They're about values, about what kind of company we want to be. I outlined the new accountability-centered approach, explaining how every project would require verification before proceeding, how research findings would be subject to multiple independent reviews, how concerns about procedures could be raised without fear of retaliation. And one more thing, I added, noting how Camden's relaxed posture had gradually stiffened as I spoke. Everyone, from leadership to junior researchers, will participate in monthly rotation through the testing labs. Everyone needs to understand our core work from the ground up. The faces of my colleagues, the ones who'd skipped my dinner for Camden's retirement party, fell as they realized what this meant. Their comfortable routines were over. Camden, who had never actually worked in a lab despite leading research initiatives, looked particularly pale. As the meeting concluded and people filed out, Quinn approached with a strained smile. "About missing your dinner," he began. I cut him off with a smile that contained not an ounce of warmth. "No need for explanations, Quinn. I've learned who values my work, and more importantly, who doesn't." He swallowed hard and walked away. Talia waited until almost everyone had left before approaching me. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "Bryn, we'll have a departmental meeting tomorrow at 9, I interrupted. "Please bring a complete accounting of all your current projects and research contributions." She stared at me. "Is that all you have to say to me?" I considered her for a long moment. "For now, yes. Tomorrow is a new day, Talia, with new rules." As I walked out of the auditorium, I felt dozens of eyes on me, some fearful, some resentful, some calculating how to adapt to this new reality. I didn't look back. The time for looking back was over. That evening, I finally returned to the restaurant where I'd sat alone weeks earlier. I requested the same table, ordered a glass of wine, and savored a meal in solitude, not out of loneliness this time, but out of choice. The same server recognized me. "Special occasion?" she asked as she brought my dessert. "Yes," I said, raising my glass in a toast to myself. "I'm celebrating a promotion." The first month as Innovation Verification Division Director passed in a blur of meetings, policy implementations, and restructuring. I maintained a professional demeanor that revealed nothing of my inner thoughts, treating everyone with the same cool efficiency, even those who had betrayed me. My new office, centrally located with glass walls overlooking the main research floor, allowed me to observe everyone while remaining visible myself, a constant reminder of the new order. Quinn struggled to adjust to reporting to me. In our weekly one-on-one meetings, he alternated between attempting to establish our old dynamic, where he guided and I followed, and overcompensating with excessive deference. "I've always valued your thoroughness, Bryn," he said during one such meeting, leaning forward earnestly. "Even when it didn't seem like it. Is that why my reports kept getting lost?" I asked mildly, not looking up from my tablet where I reviewed his team's latest submissions. He cleared his throat. "That was unfortunate. Communication breakdowns happen in any organization." "They certainly do," I agreed. "Which is why our new verification protocols require triple confirmation of receipt and review. No more breakdowns. No." The lab rotation program proved particularly illuminating. Senior managers who hadn't set foot in a testing facility in years found themselves running basic experiments alongside junior researchers. Camden, especially, struggled with the hands-on work, repeatedly making elementary mistakes that even first-year students would avoid. "This is busy work," Camden complained during the second week of rotation. "My skills are better utilized in strategic planning." "Your strategic planning is precisely why we needed this program," I replied. "Everyone needs to understand the science they're rushing to market." Talia adapted better than most, though the shadow of her betrayal hung between us. She threw herself into the lab work, staying late and volunteering for additional testing responsibilities. During group discussions, she would glance my way after making a point. Seeking approval, I deliberately withheld. One evening, she cornered me as I was leaving. "I know you haven't forgiven me," she said, her voice low, "but I'm trying to make it right. By doing your job." "That's the minimum expectation, Talia." She flinched. "What do you want from me, Bryn?" "I've apologized. I'm working harder than anyone. What else can I do?" I studied her for a moment. "Why did you do it? Really? And don't talk to me about your mother's medical bills again. You could have kept your job without actively helping to steal my work." She looked away. "Camden convinced me you would hold the company back, that your cautious approach would mean we'd all lose our jobs when funding dried up." She swallowed hard. "And I wanted to be on the winning side. Just once. And now?" "Now I know I chose wrong," she whispered, "in every possible way." I nodded and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the corridor. As the second month began, resistance to my changes grew more organized. Quinn, Camden, and several senior managers began meeting after hours. Though they tried to be discreet, in a company full of scientists, very little remains truly hidden. Nico, a junior researcher who had been at Camden's retirement party, approached me hesitantly one morning. "Director Azarian, can I speak with you privately?" In my office, he nervously explained that he'd been invited to join what Quinn was calling a strategic alignment group, essentially, a coalition to limit my influence and eventually push me out. "They're saying your changes are too disruptive," Nico said, "that the company will lose its competitive edge if every innovation has to pass through such rigorous verification. And what do you think, Nico?" He looked surprised at the question. I think they're wrong. The lab rotations have already caught 3 major issues that would have caused problems down the line, and the open verification system means my concerns actually get heard now. I smiled. "Thank you for telling me. What will you do?" he asked. "Address it directly," I replied. "Sunlight is the best disinfectant." The next day, I called an all-hands meeting. Without naming names, I addressed the concerns about the verification process, slowing innovation. "Speed without accuracy isn't innovation, it's gambling," I told the assembled staff. "And we almost lost everything on that gamble 3 months ago." I presented data showing that despite the additional verification steps, our actual development timeline had shortened. Without the constant backtracking to fix fundamental issues that had been overlooked in the rush, we were making more consistent progress. "Anyone who feels our new structure is too restrictive is welcome to meet with me directly," I concluded. "My door is always open. What I will not tolerate is underground resistance that undermines our collective work." I looked directly at Quinn as I said this. His face flushed red. That afternoon, he came to my office, closing the door behind him. "That was quite a performance," he said, his voice tight with anger. "Publicly threatening people who disagree with you. Is that what you heard?" "Interesting." I gestured for him to sit. "I heard an invitation for open dialogue about concerns." "You've changed, Bryn. The person I hired 5 years ago would never have played politics like this. The person you hired 5 years ago trusted that hard work and honesty would be recognized on their merits." I leaned forward. "She was wrong." "Look," Quinn said, changing tactics, his voice softening. "I know things got messy with the promotion dinner and Camden's retirement coinciding. We should have handled it better. But this reorganization has gone too far. You're alienating our best people." "Am I? Or am I exposing who those best people actually are?" He stared at me, then stood abruptly. "The board won't support these changes forever. Once the initial scare wears off, they'll start asking questions about our innovation pipeline." "They're welcome to," I replied. "The numbers speak for themselves." As he reached the door, I added, "By the way, Quinn, I'll need your team's verification documentation for the modified polymer project by tomorrow. It seems to be missing several required sign-offs." His shoulders tensed, but he left without another word. That night, I received an unexpected call from the board chairwoman, Elaine. "Bryn, are you aware of the resistance you're facing from some of the senior team?" she asked without preamble. "Yes," I replied. "It's to be expected with any significant change. Quinn has approached several board members individually, expressing concerns about innovation slowdown." My heart beat faster, but I kept my voice steady. "Has he provided data to support these concerns?" "No," she said. "Just anecdotal observations." "I see. I've compiled extensive metrics on our development timeline since implementing the new protocols. I'd be happy to present them at the next board meeting." "That would be helpful," she said. "Bryn, there's something else. Camden is claiming that the original formula, your formula, is showing stability issues in recent testing." My blood ran cold. This was a direct attack on my credibility. If the formula that had saved the company turned out to be flawed, my position would be untenable. "That's impossible," I said, "unless the testing parameters have been modified." "That's what I thought you might say," Elaine replied, "which is why I've arranged for an independent lab to verify the results. In the meantime, tread carefully. You've made powerful enemies." After we hung up, I sat in my darkened apartment, mind racing. This wasn't just resistance to change. This was a coordinated effort to discredit me and reverse everything I'd accomplished. They were trying to prove that I was just as willing to cut corners as they were. The next morning, I arrived at the office before anyone else. I needed to examine Camden's alleged testing data before others arrived. It didn't take long to find the reports. They were prominently displayed on the shared drive, accessible to the entire research team. As I suspected, the testing parameters had been altered. The temperature range was extended far beyond standard conditions, and the humidity cycling was accelerated to an unrealistic degree. Under these extreme conditions, even the most stable materials would show signs of degradation. I was downloading the data when I heard a sound behind me. Turning, I found Talia standing in the doorway. "I knew you'd find it," she said quietly. "Did you know about this?" I asked, gesturing to the screen. She nodded. "Camden asked me to help design the modified testing parameters last week." I refused. "But you didn't warn me." "I wanted to," she said, stepping into the room. "But I needed proof first." She held out a flash drive. This contains the original testing instructions Camden gave to the lab technicians, along with recordings of conversations where he specifically directed them to push the materials to failure. I stared at her. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because what they're doing is wrong," she said simply, "and because I want to finally be on the right side." I took the flash drive. "This doesn't make us friends again, Talia." "I know." A sad smile flickered across her face. "But maybe it makes us not enemies." With Talia's evidence and my own analysis, I prepared a comprehensive report for Elaine and the independent testing lab. The attempt to sabotage my formula had been clumsy, motivated by desperation rather than careful planning. The next 2 weeks were tense. Camden, Quinn, and their allies moved through the office with confident smiles, clearly believing their plan was working. I maintained my usual calm demeanor, continuing to implement verification protocols and run the lab rotations as if nothing was wrong. Then came the day of reckoning. Elaine called an emergency board meeting. All senior staff were required to attend, including Quinn and Camden. The independent lab's representative, a stern woman named Dr. Ashby, presented her findings first. The formula developed by Director Azarian shows no stability issues whatsoever under standard testing conditions, she stated flatly. The reported degradation only occurs under extreme parameters that no building material would reasonably encounter unless situated directly on a volcano during an eruption. Quinn shifted uncomfortably. Camden stared stonily ahead. Furthermore, Dr. Ashby continued, "Our investigation revealed that these extreme testing parameters were deliberately designed to induce failure, with specific instructions to lab technicians to report any degradation, no matter how minor, as systematic formula instability." Elaine thanked Dr. Ashby, then turned to me. "Director Azarian, do you have anything to add?" "Just this," I said, distributing copies of a document to each board member. "This is my proposal for the final phase of our restructuring. Given the deliberate attempt to sabotage not just my position but the company's flagship product, I believe more comprehensive changes are needed." The board members read silently. Quinn tried to peek at the document in front of his neighbor, who angled it away from him. "These are serious recommendations," Elaine said finally. "Termination of several senior staff, a complete overhaul of the leadership team, and a new ethics committee with direct reporting to the board." "Yes," I agreed. "The events of the past 3 months have demonstrated that our problems run deeper than I initially believed." Quinn stood up, face flushed. "This is outrageous. You can't fire people for challenging your methods." "Sit down, Quinn," Elaine said sharply. "No one is being fired for challenging methods, but deliberately falsifying test results to undermine a colleague and potentially damage the company's reputation with investors? That's another matter entirely." Camden remained silent, eyes fixed on the table. The board voted unanimously to accept my recommendations. By the end of the day, Quinn, Camden, and 3 other senior managers had been escorted from the building by security, their access badges deactivated. As I watched them leave from my office window, I felt no triumph, no vindication, only a quiet certainty that justice had finally been served. The following week, I called Talia into my office. She entered cautiously, clearly unsure of her standing after the purge. "I have a question for you," I said, gesturing for her to sit. Why did you help them steal my work in the first place, but then help me expose their sabotage attempt? She looked down at her hands. The first time, I convinced myself it was for the greater good, that Camden's approach might actually be faster, better for everyone. She met my eyes. The second time, there was no greater good to hide behind, just people trying to protect their power by hurting someone else. I considered her words. There's an opening for assistant director of verification. Someone who understands both the science and how easily it can be manipulated for personal gain would be valuable in that role. Hope flickered across her face. Are you offering me the position? I'm offering you a chance to earn it, I replied. It will take time to rebuild trust. Are you willing to put in that time? Yes, she said without hesitation. Whatever it takes. 6 months later, I stood at the podium at our first commercial production facility ribbon-cutting ceremony. Behind me, rows of machinery hummed, transforming waste plastic into building materials that would revolutionize construction worldwide. Reporters snapped photos as I explained how our verification-centered approach had actually accelerated development by eliminating costly mistakes and backtracking. Our stock had doubled since the restructuring. The board had approved an expanded research budget and employee profit-sharing program. The company culture had transformed from one of shortcuts and politics to one of thoroughness and collaboration. As I fielded questions from journalists, I spotted Nico guiding a group of new hires through the facility. Talia stood with the executive team, her assistant director badge gleaming under the lights. She caught my eye and gave a small nod of acknowledgement. That evening, I returned to the restaurant where I'd sat alone on what should have been my celebration night. This time, I'd reserved a table for one by choice. The same server recognized me and smiled. Another special occasion? She asked as she brought my wine. Yes, I replied, raising my glass in a solitary toast, to patience and consequences. My phone buzzed with a news alert. I checked it and smiled. Quinn had just been turned down for a position at his third company in 6 months. Camden's consulting business had filed for bankruptcy after failing to secure any clients. The consequences of their actions had followed them, just as night follows day. I put my phone away and savored my meal, no longer the woman who had been forgotten and betrayed, but the architect of my own justice. Not through dramatic confrontation or public humiliation, but through something far more powerful, creating a system where integrity finally mattered more than charm, where substance outweighed style, where the work spoke for itself. My revenge wasn't in destroying those who had wronged me. It was in building something so much better in their absence that their own choices had rendered them irrelevant. If this story of professional revenge resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about justice served with patience and intelligence. Have you ever been overlooked or had your work stolen? Share your experience in the comments below. Remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting ahead and creating a system where integrity actually matters.